Welcome to Lesson 1, Session 1, where we explore volume. Our learning targets are we can describe that a cube with side length of 1 unit is called a unit cube. It is said to have 1 cubic unit of volume, and it can be used to measure volume. Also, a solid figure which can be packed without gaps or overlaps using n or a certain number of unit cubes is said to have a volume of n cubic units. To begin, consider this problem. Describe the index card and describe the box. What dimension does a box have that an index card does not have? At this point, I would like you to please pause the video so you can consider your answer to this question and then press play. So if we look at the index card, we see that the index card has 2 dimensions. It has length and it also has width. So we would call the index card a 2-dimensional object. The box, however, has a 3rd dimension. It has length, it has width, but it also has height. So the dimension that the box has, that the index card does not have, is height. So what does volume measure? Volume is the amount of 3-dimensional space enclosed by a closed surface. For example, the space that a shape occupies or contains. Number 1. This is in your book. Please follow along as we go through the slides. A plane figure is a 2-dimensional figure. Explain how to measure the area of the plane figure using the unit square. Please pause your video again so you can find your solution and then press play. So this is our unit square. Each one of these squares equals 1 square unit. So if we take each of these squares and we use them to completely cover the surface of our plane figure without any gaps, then we find that we have used 4 unit squares to cover our plane figure. So we would measure this as 4 square units. Number 2. A solid figure is a 3-dimensional figure. The volume of a solid figure is the amount of space inside the figure. In other words, how many cubes fit inside the solid figure without any gaps. A unit cube is a cube that has side lengths of 1 unit. How do you think you could use unit cubes to measure the volume of the solid figure? To use the unit cubes to measure the solid figure, you can see how many of these unit cubes would fit inside of this solid figure. Number 3. A rectangular prism is a solid figure with 6 rectangular sides, or faces. The 2 boxes shown below are identical rectangular prisms with unit cubes inside them. Circle the diagram that you think shows the correct way to use unit cubes to measure the volume of the rectangular prism. Cross out the incorrect way, and then explain your choice. Pause the video so you can do this work in your workbook and then press play. Looking at these 2 figures, we notice that although the rectangular prisms are the same size, the cubes in them are different. This one we notice has gaps on way 1. There's gaps in between the cubes. And we've already learned that when we are looking at the volume of a solid figure, we can't have any gaps or spaces in between. So this way would be incorrect because there are gaps in between the cubes. And way 2 is the correct way because there are no gaps and everything fits tightly together. Number 4. A unit cube is said to have 1 cubic unit of volume. Cubic units are used to measure the volume of a solid figure. Letter A. What is the volume of each unit cube inside the rectangular prism you circled in problem 3? So here is that rectangular prism again, and we're looking at just each cube. So each one of these cubes has a volume of 1 cubic unit. Letter B, what is the volume of the rectangular prism? To find the volume of this rectangular prism, we will count how many of these cubes fit inside the entire prism. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 cubes. I also noticed, to make that a little bit easier, that there are 3 rows and each row has 4 cubes in it. So I could also take 3 times 4 to find that it is 12 cubic units. Number 5, reflect. Why do you use cubic units instead of square units to find the volume of a solid figure? Pause and write down your reflection answer and then press play. Solid figures have 3 dimensions: length, width, and height. So you need a unit that has 3 dimensions to measure the space inside a solid figure. A unit cube has 3 dimensions, while a square only has 2 dimensions. In other words, a square is just a flat shape, whereas a cube is 3-dimensional. So here is the flat shape, the square, and here's the unit cube that we can use to measure the volume of a solid figure. In your workbook, the first page of your assignment is the vocabulary page, and I'm going to walk you through that just to make sure we're on the same page and you have everything that you need to know before you continue with the rest of your assignment. I would like to see you fill this out the best as you can first, and then we'll work on it together. You can check your answers here. So if you want to pause and then press play again when you have it filled out, you may do so. So what we're looking at here is cubic unit. What is a cubic unit? A cubic unit is the volume of a cube that measures 1 unit on each edge. So it's 1 unit in length, 1 unit in width, and 1 unit in height. And those units can be whatever measure you're using. It might be inches or centimeters or feet, but we're going to say unit because we're not exactly sure which kind of measure we're using. What do I know about cubic units? I can use cubic units to measure volume. And then some examples. This is 1 unit cube. The second box on examples, this prism has a volume of 12 cubic units. And the third one, this prism has a volume of 4 cubic units. All right, I hope you join me next time for session 2.